Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a shelter, watching a small group of dogs huddle together for warmth, their eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. This might be their last night. They've been through so much, abandoned, neglected, and now facing the hardest moment of their lives. What happens next will shock you. But just before everything changes, something extraordinary happens that no one saw coming. A simple act of kindness, a touch of compassion, changes everything. A shelter worker named Brian steps in, not knowing that his small act will trigger a chain of events that no one could have predicted. As he bends down to comfort the dogs, one particular pup catches his attention. He's always had a soft spot for the older dogs, the ones no one ever seems to choose. But this one is different. He looks up at Brian with eyes full of gratitude, yet there's something about him, something that's off. Brian takes a deep breath, reaching out to pet the dog. He notices a small collar hidden beneath the dog's thick fur. It's old, worn, and seems to have been hidden intentionally. Brian carefully lifts it and notices something engraved on the tag. At first, it seems like a mistake, but as he reads it again, his heart skips a beat. What he sees makes him stop in his tracks. This can't be, Brian whispers to himself, and for a moment, he feels a chill run down his spine. Something wasn't adding up. The collar wasn't just a tag. It was a message. The dog had been here before, but not like this. Brian knew this dog, or at least he thought he did. It wasn't just a random dog in need. This was a dog with a story, a past that was far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. Brian runs his fingers over the tag, slowly piecing together the mystery. His curiosity grows, and he can't shake the feeling that something about this dog had been hidden until now. He calls over his colleague, Sarah, who had been working at the shelter for years. Sarah is taken aback when she sees the collar. She immediately recognizes the name engraved on it, a name she hasn't heard in years. This wasn't just any dog. This was a dog that had been lost, but had now returned in a way no one expected. Brian feels a mix of shock and disbelief. He can't understand why this dog had been left behind or why he was wearing a collar with that name on it. Was it possible that the dog had been in a different shelter, in a different life, before ending up here? As Brian tries to make sense of the situation, the dog, now seemingly aware of the attention he's getting, looks up at Brian with an almost knowing gaze. There's a connection between them, a silent understanding that neither of them can explain. The tension in the room is palpable. Sarah picks up the phone and makes a call to the vet, a call that will change everything. The vet arrives moments later, looking at the dog with a puzzled expression. He examines the collar and scans the dog for a microchip. What happens next will leave everyone speechless. The vet's face goes pale as he looks at the dog's medical records. This dog is not just any shelter dog, the vet says, his voice trembling. There's something much bigger going on here. We need to figure out what happened to him, and fast. The story of this dog, once forgotten, is about to unfold in ways no one could have ever imagined. But for now, all Brian can do is look at the dog, his mind racing with questions. How did this dog end up here? And why was he wearing that collar with that name? The answers are out there, and the truth will shock everyone who ever thought they knew this dog's story. As the vet takes a step back, still in shock, Sarah can't help but notice the worry in Brian's eyes. He stands frozen, holding the dog's collar in his hand, his mind racing to make sense of the revelation. The vet, still reeling from the discovery, turns to Brian and Sarah, his voice barely a whisper. This isn't just any dog, he says, the weight of his words sinking in. There's something much deeper at play here. We need to act fast. Sarah exchanges a quick glance with Brian, both of them feeling the magnitude of what's unfolding. The dog, still calm and seemingly aware of the attention it's receiving, remains at the center of the room. Brian feels a mix of disbelief and urgency. Why hadn't anyone noticed this before? How could something so important have been overlooked? As he watches the dog, its eyes meeting his with a knowing calmness, Brian realizes that this moment might be the beginning of a journey that would change everything. We need to get to the bottom of this, Brian says, his voice filled with determination. He gently pets the dog, who responds with a soft nuzzle against his hand, as if silently agreeing. The room goes quiet, and for a moment, it's just Brian, Sarah, and the dog, locked in a moment of unspoken understanding. The vet, sensing the urgency, starts making calls, speaking quickly and efficiently as he arranges for further tests and scans. Brian watches as the vet takes the dog to a separate room for a more thorough examination. He knows they're on the verge of uncovering something monumental, but he can't shake the feeling that this dog has been hiding a secret for far too long. As the minutes pass, Brian and Sarah exchange uneasy glances, each of them wondering how deep this mystery goes. "What do you think it means?" Sarah asks, her voice soft but filled with concern. Brian runs his hand through his hair, trying to piece together the fragments of information they've just uncovered. "I don't know," he admits, his tone tinged with frustration. "But I have a feeling we're about to find out." Just as Brian begins to speak again, the vet reappears, his expression serious. "You're not going to believe this," he says, holding up a small file in his hand. "The dog's previous records, there's something about them that doesn't add up. It's almost as if someone has been covering up parts of his past." The room falls into a heavy silence as the implications of the vet's words hit Brian and Sarah. What kind of secrets were hidden in this dog's past? Why had the records been altered or erased? The dog, meanwhile, lies quietly on the floor, as if sensing the tension in the air. For a brief moment, Brian wonders if the dog truly understands the gravity of the situation. He stares at the dog, feeling a deep connection that goes beyond words. The bond between them feels almost destined, as if the dog has been waiting for this moment all along. Sarah watches Brian, her own thoughts swirling with confusion and curiosity. She has worked with animals for years, but she's never encountered a case quite like this one. There's something undeniably special about this dog, something that has yet to be fully understood. "We need to keep looking," Brian says finally, breaking the silence. "There's more to this story than we know, and I won't stop until we uncover it." He looks down at the dog, who gives a soft wag of its tail as if acknowledging his resolve. With a renewed sense of determination, Brian and Sarah prepare to dive deeper into the mystery of this dog's past, unaware that what they uncover will change the course of everything. The secrets of this dog's life, long buried, are about to be revealed, and nothing will ever be the same again. As the vet takes a step back, still in shock, Sarah can't help but notice the worry in Brian's eyes. He stands frozen, holding the dog's collar in his hand, his mind racing to make sense of the revelation. The vet, still reeling from the discovery, turns to Brian and Sarah, his voice barely a whisper. "This isn't just any dog," he says, the weight of his words sinking in. "There's something much deeper at play here. We need to act fast." Sarah exchanges a quick glance with Brian, both of them feeling the magnitude of what's unfolding. The dog, still calm and seemingly aware of the attention it's receiving, remains at the center of the room. Brian feels a mix of disbelief and urgency. Why hadn't anyone noticed this before? How could something so important have been overlooked? As he watches the dog, its eyes meeting his with a knowing calmness, Brian realizes that this moment might be the beginning of a journey that would change everything. "We need to get to the bottom of this," Brian says, his voice filled with determination. He gently pets the dog, who responds with a soft nuzzle against his hand, as if silently agreeing. The room goes quiet, and for a moment, it's just Brian, Sarah, and the dog, locked in a moment of unspoken understanding. The vet, sensing the urgency, starts making calls, speaking quickly and efficiently as he arranges for further tests and scans. Brian watches as the vet takes the dog to a separate room for a more thorough examination. He knows they're on the verge of uncovering something monumental, but he can't shake the feeling that this dog has been hiding a secret for far too long. As the minutes pass, Brian and Sarah exchange uneasy glances, each of them wondering how deep this mystery goes. "What do you think it means?" Sarah asks, her voice soft but filled with concern. Brian runs his hand through his hair, trying to piece together the fragments of information they've just uncovered. "I don't know," he admits, his tone tinged with frustration. "But I have a feeling we're about to find out." Just as Brian begins to speak again, the vet reappears, his expression serious. "You're not going to believe this," he says, holding up a small file in his hand. "The dog's previous records, there's something about them that doesn't add up. It's almost as if someone has been covering up parts of his past." The room falls into a heavy silence as the implications of the vet's words hit Brian and Sarah. What kind of secrets were hidden in this dog's past? Why had the records been altered or erased? The dog, meanwhile, lies quietly on the floor, as if sensing the tension in the air. For a brief moment, Brian wonders if the dog truly understands the gravity of the situation. He stares at the dog, feeling a deep connection that goes beyond words. The bond between them feels almost destined, as if the dog has been waiting for this moment all along. Sarah watches Brian, her own thoughts swirling with confusion and curiosity. She has worked with animals for years, but she's never encountered a case quite like this one. There's something undeniably special about this dog, something that has yet to be fully understood. We need to keep looking, Brian says finally, breaking the silence. There's more to this story than we know, and I won't stop until we uncover it. He looks down at the dog, who gives a soft wag of its tail as if acknowledging his resolve. With a renewed sense of determination, Brian and Sarah prepare to dive deeper into the mystery of this dog's past, unaware that what they uncover will change the course of everything. The secrets of this dog's life, long buried, are about to be revealed, and nothing will ever be the same again. The next morning, Brian arrives at the shelter early, his mind still racing from the revelations of the previous night. The vet had been right. They were dealing with something much larger than a simple case of an abandoned dog. The collar, the erased records, the strange connection to a family no one seemed to know. Everything pointed to a mystery that needed to be solved. Brian walks through the shelter's entrance, determination in his step. He finds Sarah already there, waiting by the main desk, her face serious. "Have you made any progress?" Brian asks, his voice steady. Sarah looks up from a pile of papers and shakes her head. "Not yet, but I did dig a little deeper into the dog's past." She hands him a folder, its contents filled with more unanswered questions. "There's a name here, a person who might know more about him, but their information is buried." Brian flips through the folder, his fingers shaking slightly as he sees the name, Lori Walker. The name isn't familiar to him, but something about it feels significant. He looks up at Sarah. "Let's go find out more. This Lori Walker might hold the key to everything." They head out together, Brian's thoughts focused on the mystery that's unfolding before them. As they drive to the address they've been given, the weight of the situation hangs heavily in the air. The dog, his story, isn't just a tragic tale of abandonment. There's something deeper at play, something that needs to be uncovered. When they arrive at the address, a modest house at the edge of town, Brian can't help but feel the tension rise. This is the moment that could change everything. He knocks on the door, his heart pounding. A moment later, an elderly woman answers. She looks at them curiously but doesn't seem surprised by their visit. "Can I help you?" she asks, her voice soft but firm. Brian introduces himself and explains that they're looking for information about a dog that may have once been in her care. "His name is Max," Brian says, the name slipping off his tongue. The woman's eyes flicker with recognition, and she steps back, motioning for them to come inside. As they sit down in her cozy living room, the woman, Lori Walker, begins to tell them a story. "Max was my son's dog," she says quietly. "He was a good boy. He'd always been so loyal, always there for him. But then one day, my son just disappeared. We searched for him for months, but we never found him. Max was never the same after that. He stopped eating, he stopped playing. He just lay there, waiting. I couldn't bear to watch him like that. So I brought him here, to the shelter, hoping someone could help him. But I never expected." Lori's voice cracks, and for a moment, Brian and Sarah sit in silence, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. Max's story, the mystery behind his collar, it all starts to come together. The dog was abandoned after the disappearance of his owner, left with only memories of a past that no one understood. But now, the pieces are slowly fitting into place. Brian leans forward. "So, you're saying Max used to belong to your son?" Lori nods slowly, wiping a tear from her eye. "Yes, and I believe he's been searching for him ever since. He's not just any dog. He's a dog with a purpose." Sarah looks at Brian, her eyes wide. "You think Max is trying to find his owner? That's why he's so connected to this place." Brian nods slowly, feeling a deep sense of understanding. "I think he's been waiting for something that will bring him peace. And I believe that's what we need to help him find." Lori looks at them both, a mix of hope and sadness in her eyes. "I don't know if he'll ever find what he's looking for, but I do know this. Max loved my son, and I know he still misses him every day." The room falls silent again, but now, it's different. There's a shared sense of purpose between Brian, Sarah, and Lori. They're no longer just trying to solve a mystery. They're trying to help a dog find peace, to heal the wounds of the past, and to finally give him the closure he deserves. As Brian stands to leave, he turns to Lori. Thank you for telling us all of this. We won't stop until we find the answers. Lori nods, a soft smile on her face. I know you won't. You've given Max something he's been missing for a long time. Hope. Brian and Sarah walk back to the car, their resolve stronger than ever. They know now that the story of Max, the abandoned dog, is one of deep emotional significance. And the journey they're about to undertake is one that will change everything, for Max, for the family, and for them. Brian and Sarah spend the next few days digging deeper into the mystery of Max, following every lead they can find. The more they learn, the clearer it becomes that this dog's past is far more complicated than anyone had imagined. Max's connection to Lori's son, the disappearance, and the mysterious circumstances surrounding his arrival at the shelter all point to a story that's been buried for far too long. Brian can't shake the feeling that they're getting closer, but there's still one major piece of the puzzle missing. The shelter, though a place of refuge for many animals, seems to have its own set of secrets. Max's story is just one of many that have gone untold, hidden in the shadows of the past. As Brian reviews the dog's records one more time, something catches his eye. There's a reference to a previous adoption attempt, but the details are vague and incomplete. It doesn't make sense. Why would Max have been adopted only to end up back at the shelter? What happened during that time? Sarah, who's been reviewing some of the other documents, looks up at Brian with a concerned expression. You're thinking the same thing, aren't you? She asks. Brian nods. There's more to this than just an adoption gone wrong. We need to find out who had him and why he came back. Something's not adding up. They decide to visit the shelter again, determined to find the missing link. As they arrive, the air is thick with anticipation. They know they're close, but the uncertainty of what they might uncover weighs heavily on them. Walking through the shelter's doors, Brian feels a sense of urgency. This isn't just about finding the truth for Max anymore. It's about giving him the peace he's been searching for. The shelter's director, Mr. Thompson, greets them with a warm smile, but there's something in his eyes that tells Brian he knows more than he's letting on. What brings you back? Mr. Thompson asks, his tone casual, but his gaze wary. Brian doesn't waste any time. We've been looking through Max's records, and we found something strange. There's an adoption mention, but it doesn't say who took him. We need to know more about that. Mr. Thompson hesitates, his expression shifting slightly. That's not information we usually share, he says carefully, but I'll see what I can do. After a long pause, he leads them to a back room where old records are kept. The files are dusty, forgotten by time. As Mr. Thompson flips through them, Brian and Sarah exchange glances. They're getting closer, they can feel it. Finally, Mr. Thompson pulls out a file with a name on it, Rebecca Harris. This is the woman who adopted Max, he says, handing it to Brian. But the records are incomplete. All I know is that she was a local woman, and she brought him back after a few weeks. Brian feels a wave of frustration wash over him. Rebecca Harris. The name means nothing to him, but he knows they need to find her. Do you have any other details about her? Brian asks. Mr. Thompson shakes his head. No, just that she seemed kind enough, but after Max was returned, she never came back. Brian and Sarah exchange a determined look. This is the break they've been waiting for. The next step is clear. They need to find Rebecca Harris. The answers they seek are tied to her, and until they do, Max's past will remain a mystery. As they leave the shelter, Brian feels a sense of purpose. They're not just solving a case. They're giving Max a chance at closure. The dog that's been waiting for so long will finally have the answers he deserves. Brian knows the journey ahead won't be easy, but he's ready to face whatever comes next. Max has waited long enough, and so has the truth. Brian and Sarah waste no time tracking down Rebecca Harris. The name rings no bells, but they know she's the key to unlocking Max's past. They spend the next few days searching through local records, making calls, and asking around town. Finally, they get a lead. A woman by that name has been living in a quiet suburban neighborhood on the outskirts of town. With their hearts pounding, they drive out to meet her. The neighborhood is peaceful, with rows of modest homes, the smell of fresh-cut grass in the air. They pull up to a small house with a neatly trimmed lawn and a single car parked in the driveway. It's a far cry from the chaotic, hectic life they expected when they started this search. They walk up to the front door and ring the bell, the sound echoing in the quiet neighborhood. Moments later, a woman in her mid-40s answers the door. She's wearing a soft sweater and looks surprised to see them. "Can I help you?" she asks, her voice calm but cautious. Brian takes a deep breath and introduces himself. "Hi, I'm Brian, and this is Sarah. We're here about a dog named Max. We believe you might have adopted him some time ago." The woman's expression shifts, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. She hesitates for a moment before stepping back and motioning for them to come in. As they enter, Brian feels a mix of nervousness and anticipation. This could be the moment that changes everything. The inside of the house is cozy, with soft lighting and a few family pictures on the walls. It feels like a home that's been lived in for years, but there's a certain sadness in the air. The woman leads them to the living room and sits down, motioning for them to do the same. "I remember Max," she says, her voice soft. "He was a sweet dog. My son loved him, but..." She trails off, her gaze distant. Brian leans forward, eager to hear more. "What happened? Why did you return him to the shelter?" The woman takes a deep breath, her eyes welling with tears. "It's a long story," she begins, her voice wavering. "My son, Ethan, he passed away unexpectedly a few months after we adopted Max. It was devastating, and Max, he was never the same after that. He became withdrawn, refusing to eat, and I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't help him, no matter how hard I tried." Sarah's heart aches as she listens, and Brian feels the weight of the story settling in. This wasn't just a dog being returned because of behavioral issues. It was the loss of a beloved companion, a family torn apart by tragedy. "I couldn't take care of him anymore," the woman continues. "I thought the shelter could help him, find him a new home. I didn't want to let him go, but I couldn't give him the life he deserved. It broke my heart, but I had to make the choice." Brian looks at Sarah, his mind spinning. This was the piece they were missing. Max's pain wasn't just from being abandoned. It was from the loss of his beloved owner, the person he had bonded with, and the deep grief that came with it. "Do you know where Max is now?" Brian asks gently. The woman nods, wiping her eyes. "I know he's been at the shelter for a while, but I heard they were trying to find him a new family. I just hope he's okay. I hope he's found peace." Brian and Sarah exchange a look. They're finally getting the answers they've been searching for, but they also know that the journey is far from over. Max's past is filled with heartbreak, but it's not the end of his story. He deserves more than just being passed from one home to another. He deserves to find his true place in the world, to heal from the wounds of his past. As they leave the woman's house, Brian feels a new sense of resolve. He won't stop until Max finds the peace he's been searching for. The journey to help Max is just beginning, and they're ready to see it through. The truth is finally coming to light, and nothing will stand in their way. Brian and Sarah's search for answers brings them to the final piece of the puzzle, the shelter where Max had been for all those years. As they approach the facility, Brian can't help but feel a sense of urgency. Max's journey, his heartache, has led them here, and now, they need to finish what they started. They walk through the shelter's entrance, the familiar scent of animals filling the air. The atmosphere is calm, but there's a quiet tension in the air as they make their way to the main office. They are determined to learn the truth about what happened to Max after Lori had to give him up. Inside the office, the shelter director, Mr. Thompson, is waiting for them. His expression is neutral, but Brian can see the concern in his eyes. "What can I do for you today?" Mr. Thompson asks, his voice polite but guarded. Brian looks him in the eye. "We've spoken with Rebecca Harris. We know Max's story up until he came here, but we need to know what happened after that. We need to know where he went and why he was left here for so long." Mr. Thompson pauses for a moment, his fingers tapping nervously on his desk. "I understand," he says, finally breaking the silence. "Max's situation is unique. He wasn't just another dog left here. He was someone's companion, someone who had cared for him deeply. But when he came back to us, he was different. He was withdrawn, almost like he was searching for something, or someone." Sarah leans in, her voice gentle. "And you never found him a new home?" Mr. Thompson shakes his head slowly. "We tried. We reached out to several potential adopters, but Max was never comfortable with them. He was waiting for something. It was as though he knew he couldn't move on until he found closure." Brian listens intently, feeling the weight of Mr. Thompson's words. He can't shake the feeling that Max has been waiting for something, or someone, this whole time. But we don't know where he came from, Mr. Thompson continues. Max had been here for a long time, and we couldn't track down any more information about his past. All we knew was that he had been brought in by Rebecca Harris after her son passed away. She had hoped we could help him, but she was too broken herself to do much more. Brian nods, his heart aching for both Max and Rebecca. So Max has been here all this time, just waiting? He asks. Mr. Thompson nods again. Yes, he's a special dog. He's not just any shelter animal. He's been through a lot. He's carrying the weight of a lot of lost time, and that's something we've never seen before. Brian looks at Sarah, his mind racing. They've learned so much about Max's past, but there's still one more thing they need to do. We need to find Max's true home, Brian says, determination in his voice. He's not just waiting for closure. He's waiting for the right place, the place where he truly belongs. Mr. Thompson seems to understand. I think you're right. Max has been through so much, but he still has so much love to give. He just needs to find the right person to give it to. Brian and Sarah leave the shelter, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. They've learned everything they can from the shelter, but now it's time to take action. Max's story isn't over. They're going to help him find his place in the world, the place he's been searching for all this time. As they drive away from the shelter, Brian looks at Sarah, a sense of calm settling over him. They're not done yet, but they know they're on the right path. Max deserves peace, and they're going to help him find it. The journey that started with a simple question is finally coming to a close, and for Max, the long wait is about to end. The next few days are a blur for Brian and Sarah as they continue their search for the right home for Max. Every lead they follow seems to circle back to the same conclusion. Max is a dog waiting for a connection, not just a new home. His history, his trauma, the deep bond he shared with his late owner, all point to one undeniable truth. Max needs someone who understands him, someone who can give him the closure he's been missing for so long. As they sit in the car outside the shelter one last time, Brian turns to Sarah, a sense of quiet determination in his eyes. We're missing something, he says. Max isn't just waiting for a new home. He's waiting for someone who knows what he's been through, someone who can help him heal. Sarah nods, deep in thought. I think you're right. We've been looking for a place, but maybe we should be looking for a person. The realization hits them both at the same time. Max's story isn't just about finding a home. It's about finding the person who can help him move on. And that person, they believe, is out there. After some careful thought, they make a plan to track down the people who had been close to Max and his late owner, people who might know the right person for him. The first lead takes them to a quiet town about an hour away. The woman who runs the local animal rescue seems to know more than she's letting on. Max was a special dog, she says when they arrive at her small but bustling facility. I remember him well. He was always so quiet, so reserved. But when he was with his owner, he was different. He was alive, you know. Brian and Sarah listen intently, hanging on every word. His owner, Ethan, he loved Max more than anything. When Ethan passed away, it was like Max lost his purpose. He just shut down. The woman looks at them, her eyes filled with compassion. But I remember something else about Max. He always had this connection to a certain person in town, a woman named Maria. She used to work with Ethan, and Max always seemed to know when she was around. After Ethan died, she came by the shelter once, but she never stayed. She said she wasn't ready to take him home. Maybe now's the time. Brian feels a surge of hope. This could be the person they've been searching for, the one who can help Max finally heal. Without wasting a moment, they head to Maria's house. The address they've been given is just a short drive away. The closer they get, the more Brian's heart races. They've come so far, and now, they're about to meet the one person who might be able to give Max the peace he's been searching for. When they arrive, the house is modest, tucked away in a quiet corner of town. Brian and Sarah knock on the door, and a woman in her early 40s answers. Her face is familiar. Max knows her. Her eyes soften when she sees the dog in Brian's arms. Max, she whispers, her voice breaking. I never thought I'd see you again. She kneels down, and Max immediately wags his tail, the recognition clear in his eyes. The connection between them is undeniable. Maria gently reaches out, her hand trembling as she strokes Max's fur. I always wanted to take you home, but I couldn't. I wasn't ready, not after losing Ethan. But now, I see that I'm the one who needs to heal. Tears fill her eyes as she looks up at Brian and Sarah. I'll give him the home he deserves, I promise. It's time for both of us to move on, together. Brian and Sarah share a quiet smile, knowing they've found the right person. Max's journey is finally coming to an end, and a new chapter is beginning. The past has been painful, but now, Max has found the closure he's been waiting for. And for Maria, the healing has just begun. As they leave, Brian feels a sense of peace wash over him. Max is no longer a dog lost in the past. He's home, and so is Maria. Together, they'll heal, and together, they'll move forward. Weeks pass, and life begins to settle into a new rhythm for both Max and Maria. The bond between them grows stronger every day. Max, once a dog weighed down by grief and loss, now walks with a renewed sense of purpose. His tail wags more often, and his eyes shine with a quiet joy that hasn't been there in so long. Maria, too, finds herself healing in ways she never thought possible. She had thought her heart was forever broken after losing Ethan, but caring for Max, who had shared such a deep connection with him, gives her a sense of peace she had been missing. Every morning, they walk together around the neighborhood, the sun rising behind them. Max trots ahead, his ears perked, tail wagging as he leads the way. Maria laughs softly, feeling a warmth she hasn't felt in years. The house, which once felt empty and lonely, now feels full of life. Max is no longer just a reminder of the past. He's become part of her future. One afternoon, as they sit together on the porch, Maria looks at Max and smiles. "You know, you've helped me more than I ever thought possible," she says, her voice soft and filled with gratitude. Max looks up at her, as if understanding every word. Maria reaches down to pet him, her fingers gently running through his fur. "I never thought I could love again after losing Ethan. But now, I see that love isn't something that just disappears. It changes. It finds new ways to show itself." Max nuzzles her hand, a simple gesture that speaks volumes. Maria laughs through her tears, feeling a sense of calm settle over her. It's been a long journey, but it's a journey that's brought her back to herself. As the days go by, Maria continues to reflect on how far she's come. She had been afraid of opening her heart again, but Max had shown her that it was possible. The love she once shared with Ethan hasn't vanished. It's transformed into something deeper, something that now includes Max. She begins to take small steps, reconnecting with old friends, reaching out to people she had distanced herself from in her grief. She even starts volunteering at the local shelter, helping other dogs like Max find their own homes. For the first time in a long while, Maria feels like she's making a difference. She feels like she's doing something for herself